السادة الحضور، شركاؤنا في النجاح، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. باسم شركة هاشم حسونة وأولاده للتجارة والتبريد وشركة إمرسون كليمت تكنولوجيز، أرحب بكم أجمل ترحيب وأشكر لكم حضوركم لمشاركتنا العرض الذي ستقدمه شركة إمرسون كليمت تكنولوجيز حول الجيل الجديد لوحدات كوبلاند الأوروبية ومنتجات أخرى. عملاؤنا الأكارم، إن شركة هاشم حسونة وأولاده للتجارة والتبريد وانطلاقا من سعيها الدائم بتوفير كل جديد في مجال التبريد والتكنولوجيا الخاصة بها تعمل وبكل الوسائل ممكن، ومنها لقاءات متكررة كلقائنا هذا ووسائل التواصل الاجتماعي، الموقع الإلكتروني للشركة، اليوتيوب، الفيسبوك، التويتر، ورسائل SMS على هواتفكم الذكية أن تطلعكم على كل جديد، وأتمنى أن تجدوا فيه المعلومات الجديدة والفائدة لأعمالكم ونشاطاتكم، كما يسرها أن تستقبل كل آرائكم واقتراحاتكم وانتقاداتكم بما فيه الخير لنا ولعملائنا الأكارم. أيها الأحبة، تؤكد شركة هاشم حسونة وأولاده للتجارة والتبريد أن محرك جودتها وقوده خدمتكم، وأن ثقة الناس هي الأساس في كل نجاح. Our partners in success, Hashim Hassouna and Sons Refreshing and Trading Company with Emerson Climate Technologies welcome you and thank you for your coming. Our show to be presented by Emerson Climate Technologies about the new generation of European Copeland units and other products. Dear customers, from its enjoying quest to provide all new refrigeration and technology works by all means possible, including this meeting and means of social network, website of the company, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and SMS to your smart telephones. For every new, and hope that you will find the new information and interest into your work and activities. Also pleased to receive all your opinions and suggestions that is good for us and for you, for our customers. أيها الأحبة، يسرني وقبل بدء العرض أن أقدم السيد وليد حسونة مدير التسويق في عرض تقديمي حول الشركة، فليتفضل مشكورا. Dear sharing, Hashim Hassouna and Sons Refreshing Trading Company confirm that I am pleased before we start to introduce Mr. Walid Hassouna, Marketing Manager, to provide a presentation about our company.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بالبداية أحب أعرفكم عن نفسي، وليد حسون مدير تسويق الشمسي. أرحب فيكم وأشكركم على حضوركم باسمي وباسم جميع أعضاء الشركة. طبعا حابب أقول لكم قبل ما نبدأ السمينار كم شغلة كذا لازم تكونوا عارفينها قبل ما تخشوا في الموضوع التقني. بالبداية هذا السمينار عملناه بالتعاقد مع شركة إميرسون، وهم حيكون موجود مستر روبرتو ومستر مارفن حيساعدوكم انهم تعرفوا ايش الجديد اللي صار معانا في الوحدات الجديدة. طبعا عشان يكون في تواصل بيننا خاصة في السمينار عملنا هاشتاج على تويتر اسمه HRC NGS، ممكن تشاركونا فيه آراءكم، استفساراتكم، أي اقتراحات، أي حاجة تتواصلوا معنا فيها. طبعا هذه الجيل الجديد من الكمبرسورات والوحدات، طبعا هو تغير اللون بس مو بس انه تغير اللون، اكيد في اشياء جديده حيفيدكم فيها الشباب بعد شويه. طبعا احنا هذه اول ناس دخلنا الوحدات هذه بالمملكه بعد التعديل الجديد اللي عليها اللي هي اللون الاسود. طبعا احنا عملنا السمينار ده عشان نتاكد من مصداقيه اللون، لا يكون بالكم يروح مش عصريه او تقليد او الى اخره يعني. طبعا احنا اول ناس دخلناها زي ما دخلناها من قبل 35 سنه بس باللون القديم اللي انتم عارفينه طبعا الجيل. وشرفني انه احنا اخذنا جائزتين من شركه الجيل في 2011. كانت في 2011 في احسن مبيعات في الشرق الاوسط بالنسبه للوحدات، اما في 2013 اخذنا احسن مبيعات في الشرق الاوسط وافريقيا. بالنسبه للضمان اكثر الناس بيقولوا انه يعني الضمان سنه قليل واحنا نحتاج اكثر وكيف احنا بالشركه بنمنع ضمان سنتين على الكونجنسي ليميت. حاليا بس حابب اشكركم بما انه موجودين هنا في الفروع الجديده. احنا حاليا كنا بنغطي بس المنطقه الغربيه والمنطقه الوسطى. في الفتره هذه صرنا احنا بنغطي اللي هي منطقه المدينه منطقه مكه المكرمه اللي هي جده، ومنطقه المدينه المنوره فيها المدينه المنوره، ومنطقه الرياض منطقه الرياض، والمنطقه الشرقيه حاليا في الدمام. ان شاء الله في يعني خلال السنه الجايه بدايه السنه الجايه حنغطي اكثر من منطقه لمده 8 مناطق تكونيه ان شاء الله. طيب هذه يعني رسم بياني مبسط بس يكونوا عارفين ايش المدن اللي احنا بنغطيها. في 2007 لغايه 2012 كنا بنغطي تقريبا بس مده 7 مدن بس. اما في 2013 احنا بنغطي تقريبا من يقارب 14 مدينه. في 2014 باذن الله حنغطي مع الفروع الجديده تقريبا 23 مدينه حول المملكه. بالنسبه لعدد السكان اللي احنا بنقدر نخدمهم بشكل مباشر خلال تواجدنا في المناطق اللي هم قريبين منهم. من 2007 2012 كنا بنغطي تقريبا 11 مليون يعني بسهم. لغايه 2013 السنه هذه يعني تقريبا 16 مليون. في 2014 باذن الله ناويين نغطي 23 مليون بسهم. هذه الموانئ احنا بنغطي هي في 16 ميناء في المملكه ما بين البحري وما بين التجاري تجاري ونقل ركاب وصيد اسماك. احنا كنا بنغطي في 2007 لغايه 2012 7 موانئ، في 2013 بنغطي 10 ميناء، في 2014 ان شاء الله بنغطي 16 كامل باذن الله. هذا بالنسبه للمدن الصناعيه. المدن الصناعيه احنا بنغطي كنا في 2007 2012 تقريبا 7 مدن. في 2013 بنغطي تقريبا 13 مدينه. في 2014 ناويين نغطي 23 مدينه، هي اصلا 23 مدينه صناعيه في المملكه. المدن الصناعيه المدن الاقتصاديه هي 4 مدن اقتصاديه حاليا مش منها 2 مدينه الملكه الاقتصاديه ومدينه المعرفه المدينه المنوره. هذه احنا حاليا بنغطيها. في 2014 ان شاء الله حيكون في جيزان لنا فرق في حائل حيكون في هناك مدينتين اقتصاديين فباذن الله حنكون مغطينا. هذا بالنسبه للمصانع اللي متخصصه في المواد الغذائيه والمشروبات. لغايه 2007 2012 كنا بنغطي تقريبا اكثر من 200 مصنع. لغايه 2013 بنغطي اكثر من 400 مصنع. 2013 400 مصنع. لغايه 2014 حنغطي باذن الله اكثر من 750 مصنع. هي اجمالي المصانع على المصانع الموجوده. احنا يعني عشان نكون قريبين منكم اكثر للناس اللي مو موجودين في المدن اللي احنا ذكرناها قبل شوي. كان في لنا موقع الكتروني من 2011 بس احنا طورناه يكون افضل عشان نقدر ندخلكم بشكل اوسع وافضل يعني. طبعا موجود في المنشورات اللي قدامكم الموقع الالكتروني اللي تدخلوا عليه. طبعا هذه في برنامج دايرتي اللي هو برنامج ولاء طبعا معروف للكل لديكم. ممكن من خلال هذه البوابه الالكترونيه موقع الكتروني تدخل اليوزر نيم وباسورد وتقدر تعرف كل حساباتك الشخصيه كم سحبت وكم لك وكم نقطه كسبتها والى اخره. طيب بالنسبه للكتالوجات الجديده للوحدات الجديده وغيرها تقدر تحملونها عن طريق الويب سايت عن طريق في ايفون اللي هي كتالوجات خاصه في كل الكتالوجات اللي تحتاجوها. في النهاية يعني الشيخ هاشم بيوصل لكم سلامه وبيتمنى أن يكون موجود معاكم، وباسمي واسم جميع أعضاء الشركة أشكره على تقدمه لنا طوال العمر الموجود في الشركة. وفي النهاية أشكركم على استماعكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Dear sharing, Hashim Hassouna and Sound Refreshing and Trading Company confirm that you are our qualities angel-free by your service. And public confidence is the fountain of every success. I thank Mr. Walid for the presentation, and I leave you now with Emerson Technology Seminar, wishing you the best and the pleasure. أشكر السيد وليد حسون على تقديمه، وأترككم الآن مع سمينار إمرسون، وأتمنى لكم الفائدة والنفوذ.
Good evening. On behalf of SUNA and Emerson Climate Technologies, I would like to welcome you to this evening's seminar. We have a new product to present to you, and I hope that you will find this interesting, that we all learn something, and that it can be beneficial to both parties. Feel free to ask any questions during the presentation. I don't mind that. If you want to ask after the presentation, that's also fine with me as well. Okay, so the first topic we're going to be discussing is the new Copeland Viscous 3 compressor. And the topics we're going to be covering is the actual program, the product range that is available, the main benefits, and then we'll do a technical review of the product itself. So this is what the new Viscous 3 looks like. We have taken and updated the 4 and 6 cylinder compressors. The 2 and 3 cylinder compressors still remain the same. Okay? So why did we do this? Well, at the very top of our list, we always try and improve efficiency. We improve reliability, and by achieving or trying to achieve that, we are now introducing diagnostics, which is basically an electronic platform to help diagnose and solve issues with the compressor and your system. The new compressors are also multi-refrigerant. Okay? We try and design the compressor so that you can use it with R22, 134A, 404A, etc., depending on the application. We've got a couple of notes of modulation, and if sound is a benefit to you, then we've also made some strides in that as well. So what are the main features? Modulation, we will still be with the old technology in terms of block suction, but the motors, all of them have been released with inverters if you choose to use inverters for capacity modulation. We've reduced the sound level of the compressor. Obviously we've increased the efficiency. We need to keep up with the new efficiency standards, either released through governing bodies or industry. So what has changed in the new compressor? Okay, the new compressor is more compact. Right? We've reduced the crankshaft. That increases reliability by reducing the length of the crankshaft. There are now larger bearings, so it can take higher loads. We've optimized the motor. The new compressor has a new arrangement of cylinder bore and stroke. Okay. We've modified the valve plate to increase the efficiency as well. So in this new range, we've got 8 displacements, and each displacement will have 2 motor versions. We use the smaller one for LT application, the larger one for HT or air conditioning. And again, as I mentioned before, the refrigerants, depending on application, we have codified the compressor for all the new refrigerants on the market. As I mentioned before, this is a new compact design. So if you compare the dimensions of discus 3 with discus 2, there are going to be some changes. Okay? You have a reduction in width, length and height, and also in weight. So we'll start with the one key benefit, and that's the efficiency. Okay? We've modified the gas passages around the motor to reduce the pressure drop. And we've continued to use the discus valve plate technology. Right? All the compressors that we're selling to Saudi Arabia are discus compressors, but we have increased the efficiency with this design. So on your left-hand side, we have a standard reed compressor. On the right-hand side, the discus. The main difference between the two is that with the discus compressor, we introduce the refrigerant into the cylinder via the valve plate. So the valve plate is actually hollow. By using this design, we reduce the clearance volume, and by reducing the clearance volume, we improve the efficiency. So these are the modifications we've done to the discus valve. You can see that if we go with a smaller valve, we have a higher pressure drop, and if we go with a bigger valve, we have a bigger expansion volume. So these two work against one another. So you've got to find a compromise between the two if you want to try and achieve the best efficiency out of the compressor. And the way we are doing that is with discus technology. What I've done here is I've taken, or I've made a comparative study on 404A. This is for medium temp. The black line is the discus 3 compressor, and then the other lines are our competitors. The vertical scale is capacity and efficiency, COP. Right. So you can see that through the whole product range, we have the most efficient compressor on the market today. And the same applies for low temperature application. This is typically at about minus 35 degrees C. And as you can see, through the entire product range, we again have the most efficient compressor on the market. As I mentioned before, with all the new refrigerant regulations that are going to be coming into the kingdom, I think from 2015, we have to make sure that our compressors are compatible with these new refrigerants. Okay. So depending on how the market is going to go, either switching to 404A, 507, or 407A for low temperature, and maybe 134A for medium temperature, these compressors have been tested and qualified for that. So when the transitions happen, you will have product ready to support that transition with your customers. In terms of modulation or capacity control, we are still keeping with capacity or block suction, where we block off one cylinder to regulate the output capacity of the compressor. So that remains. What we have done though is we've changed the design of the motors so that they can work with frequency converters or VFDs or VFDs, whatever you call them, to increase the reliability of the motor with the frequency drives. Okay. So with the new compressors, if you apply a frequency converter, you can cycle that compressor from 30 Hertz up to 70 Hertz. So in each one of these applications, you need to consult the envelope and then see where the operation at a higher speed is allowed for that compressor. but all the data is available for you. In some markets, sound has become very important. So when we redesigned the valve plates, we've modified the cylinder head. We've reduced the pulsations in the head, and by reducing the gas pulsations, we're able to reduce the noise of the compressor. And again, this is a comparison of one model of Copeland versus our competition. Okay. Over and above that, we also offer now sound shell technology. It's basically a foam that's been molded, and that can be applied to fit around the compressor. So even with the redesign, we've had the reduction in noise. By using the sound shell, we're able to reduce the noise by another 10 to 15 dBA. Okay? So this is an option or an accessory that can be used if you have noise-sensitive applications. The shell is available in a knockdown kit. Because of the way it's assembled, it's got to be done when you're actually manufacturing or putting the unit together. The foam comes in different pieces for the base plate, the sides, and the stator motor cover. So this is available only as an accessory. You need to order this if it's required for your application. Now that we've covered the mechanical side, the most important aspect about these new compressors is the electronics and what we call diagnostics. Now what we're trying to do is we are installing electronics so that we use the compressor as a sensor. So by fitting sensors into the compressor, we can extract information, operational information from that compressor. And by doing that, we can increase the reliability and improve the safety features of the compressor. So now typically before with discus 2, you would have an oil pressure switch, whether you were using a mechanical one or the electronic one, and you had the INT69 thermistor, which is located in the motor box. Now with Core Sense Diagnostics, we are extending that safeties that we are now offering with the compressor. And these are indicated in this table. So number 1 and 2 is what we were offering before. Number 3 now we include high discharge temperature protection. So this is to prevent the compressor from overheating. When we did a survey in the US, almost 35% of semi-hermetics that were damaged in the field, that were returned to the factory, had failed because of overheating. So this is a very low-cost technology to apply to the compressor to protect the compressor in the field. Next, we are including a motor module, okay, which is an upgrade of the INT69. This will now include lock rotor protection, missing phase, low voltage, voltage imbalance. We're now able to do a complete protection of the motor. Okay? Depending on your supply, you would probably need to have added these accessories to your electrical board, phase failure or low voltage protection. This will now come standard with the discus 3 compressor. We've made a relay addition to control the crankcase heater. I'll talk about that later. We've got alarm indication on the diagnostic module. So it will help the service technician. It will tell the service technician why the compressor is tripped. And then with the information that we supply, it will help him diagnose what the problem is in the system. The diagnostic module also has communication capability. So you can connect this compressor in a network either to a rack controller, or if you've got a standalone application, you can connect it to your PC and you can upload the values from the compressor. So you will be able to see how the compressor has been performing. So those are some of the main features. So now this is the architecture. The main control module is this component here. Right? This is what we refer to as the control module. The compressor will now come fitted, standard, with an oil pressure switch. So oil pressure switch is already included in the supply of the compressor. We have our discharge temperature protection. So you see there's a probe connected to the head, and that is connected to the control module. We have a wiring harness that will connect the control module to the current and sensor module, and this basically replaces the old INT69 that was supplied with the compressor. So what are the benefits? We have a reduction in applied system costs, because all these accessories which we're going to be supplying as standard is already pre-wired in the factory for you. Okay, you do not have to go and source these components in the market. In terms of serviceability, the technician can now access the complete history of the compressor. That will help him diagnose any problems in the system. And for the end user, if he's connected this to a network, he can keep a record of whenever the compressor went down and what kind of maintenance was done on the compressor to get it back into operation. So those are the main benefits for the diagnostics. So if we look at the main components again, here we have the control module. This is mounted externally. And we have these two components that are now mounted inside the terminal box. Okay. We have a current sensor. The sensor is going to measure the current on one of the phases that is drawn by the motor. You can see there's a connection cable here. Connection cable is connected to the sensor module. The sensor module itself will do all the voltage, missing phase, voltage imbalance, power consumption, and so on. Okay. And then this module is connected to the diagnostic, where this will interpret all the signals and visualize all the LED safeties. This is the wiring schematic. The first thing I want to point out here that all this wiring is done by Copeland in our factory. Alright. So you're going to receive a complete wired product. So we will wire up the oil pressure switch, we will wire up the sensor module, and then the PTC sensors on the motor. Okay. One important thing to remember is that this sensor module requires 24 volt. Okay. So there are two scenarios that's going to happen with this. If you buy a condensing unit with motor code EWK, which is what we're supplying into the market now, the transformer will be included in the T-box. Okay. However, if you buy the compressor as a standalone, you will then need to purchase the transformer as an accessory, or if you want to, you can buy a transformer in the market and install the transformer in your electrical board. Okay? So you need to keep that in mind. Very importantly, the sensor module is 24 volt. So you get, this is a close-up of the sensor module. This is the current sensor. It's connected via a 4-pin plug to the sensor module. The sensor module itself will have 3 wires connected to L1, L2, L3. These 3 wires are going to be checking voltage, low voltage, voltage imbalance, missing phase. Okay? We've also included a relay for the crankcase heater. Right. So if you were installing crankcase heaters on your systems, you would normally wire the supply to your crankcase heater through an auxiliary on your contactor, so that whenever the compressor switches off, you energize the heater. You do not need to do that anymore. This will be done automatically. So you just bring in your supply, connect your crankcase heater, and the sensor module will control the on and off of the crankcase heater automatically. This is the wiring diagram label in the T-box, when you open the T-box. And it clearly illustrates here for the current sensor that you have to wire one of the phases through the current sensor. Okay? In this example here, this is a part-wound motor. So you would need to take the second line on your primary and the second line of your secondary through the current transformer so that it will read the correct amperage. If you've got a star or a delta connection, you obviously would only take one phase through that current transducer. We go now a little bit more deeper. This is the diagnostic module. We've removed the front cover. These two wires are the oil sensor. Okay. This cable here is the discharge temperature sensor. The 4-pin plug here is the PTCs that are connected to your motor. So that would be equivalent to the PTCs that we had on the INT69. Here we have the connection cable from the sensor module to the control module. And here we have our high voltage supply. Okay? There's 6 terminals on here. So you would bring in your 220 volt supply, live and neutral if you have a neutral, or just L1 to L2. Your line is your control. So you would wire in your control through the line. If everything is okay, you energize your contactor. If the compressor trips, it energizes the alarm output. You can wire that if it's required. The last terminal is your ground connection. So this is the wiring schematic. It's very simple. Power supply, and then your control circuit. Right. Now this wiring is a lot simpler to what we were offering before, because this module now includes the thermistor module and the oil pressure switch. So it will reduce the amount of wiring you need to do as accessories that were fitted to the compressor. Here we just have a 5-wire connection. Okay? So this is just a 5-core. Do we have any questions at this stage? Okay. Any questions? Great. Okay. Okay. So I brought up this table earlier on to discuss the main features. So now I'm just going to give you what the regulation parameters are. I think that was the wake-up signal, yeah? Okay, so what I'm going to just do very quickly and simply is just to go over what the regulation parameters are for each one of these safety features. If you look at item 1 and 2, the regulation parameters are exactly the same as what the INT69 was doing, and the OPS1 or the OPS2, or if you were using a mechanical oil pressure switch. So in terms of the parameters, nothing has changed. Item number 3. This is the probe that's connected into the cylinder head. This probe is set at 154 degrees. If the cylinder head temperature exceeds 154 degrees for 2 seconds, it will switch off the compressor. And it's got a 2-minute delay before it resets. It will also only reset if the temperature is below 130 degrees C. Alright? So this is a protection feature to prevent the compressor from overheating, which was not offered before. Items 4, 5, 6 and 7 all relate to the sensor module. Okay? So, if the compressor starts up and it goes into lock rotor, it will trip and there will be a 5-minute delay and it will try and start again. The same goes for missing phase. Every time the compressor starts up, if one of the phases are missing, switches off the compressor, 5 minutes, will then try and restart the compressor again. Same applies for low voltage and for voltage imbalance. All of these have a 5-minute delay. Now these items here have a double asterisk. What does the double asterisk mean? It means that the compressor will try and restart 10 times. Okay? At the 10th attempt, if it fails to restart, it then goes to manual lockout. Alright? And it basically has to be reset. And that's the same type of feature that we have on the oil pressure protection. This is, if your oil pressure trips, it's a manual reset. Okay. So these are auto for the first 9 times. On the 10th attempt, it will go to manual lockout, and then you have to go and reset the compressor.
Okay.
I explained to you how the crankcase heater works. Number 12, which I failed to mention earlier on, is power consumption. This module will actually measure power consumption. If you have it linked to a rack controller or to a network, you can update or upload those values and monitor the power consumption of your site. We're now going to talk about the LEDs. Okay? When the diagnostic module is energized, this green LED is on, power on. We then have 3 alarm conditions. The green means I've got alarm and alert. It's not bad enough to switch off the compressor, okay? But it will give an alert. Second is yellow. Compressor will switch off, but it will go through an auto delay and try and restart again. And then red means it's a lockout. Okay. These are the flash codes. These are the flash codes. So, if I have, for let's say, a missing phase condition, when I have a missing phase condition, when it trips the first time, the flash code will blink 7 times on yellow. Right? It will then try and reset. At the 10th attempt, it will go into manual lockout, and the yellow LED will go to red, and the red will blink for 7 flash codes. So if you have a trip condition and you get to site, by counting the number of flash codes, it will tell you what is wrong with the compressor. On your table, you have a small little booklet. Just this booklet here. There should be one on every table. Okay. Basically what this booklet does is it gives you, depending on what the LED status is and the flash code, it will tell you, if I've got a green flash code, what the alarm condition is, what the possible reasons are, and tips for troubleshooting. What can I look for at the compressor or in the system to try and rectify the problem. Okay. So in this booklet, it starts with the green code, it then transitions to yellow, and then finally to red. And red means it's a manual lockout. So you need to repair the problem and then reset the module. This is the reset button on the module. It's located at the bottom end here. Okay. So once you've identified what problem you have, done the repairs to the system, you can reset. The compressor will then get rid of that manual lockout feature that it has, and it will try and start again. All right? Pretty simple. if you don't have this booklet with you, and you've got a smartphone, okay, there's a QR code on the module. You can scan the code with your scanner on your smartphone, and that will automatically direct you to the website. On the website, you can then go through the website and find out what the trip condition is, what I need to look for. So basically, it's just a digital version of this booklet that you can access via your smartphone. All right? The last component I want to talk about on this module is the dip switches. Okay. Now when you get the compressor supplied to you, the dip switches are set in default. Alright. So these will need to be changed depending on how you use the compressor in your system. Alright. So if you look at dip switch 1 through 5, if you're going to use this compressor on a rack, and if you have a rack controller that has got Modbus communication, you can then talk with that supplier. We will provide the Modbus code to him. He can upload that onto his controller, and it will basically upload all the information from the compressor. So if you use it in this application, for each compressor that you have on that rack, you've got to have a device address. So you would use dip switches 1 through 5 to set the address of that compressor so that the controller can pick it up. Okay? Number 6. If you purchase the compressor and you're going to use a VFD on it, you need to change the setting of 6 to on for VFD application. And what we're basically doing with this, all the voltage and current protection that we've got on the motor is now going to be ignored by this module, and we're going to leave that to the VFD. Typically the VFD has got all the voltage, imbalance, low voltage, current and so on built into the VFD. So we allow the VFD to become the master in protecting the motor. Okay? So that is why we've got to switch this so that we don't have the two modules fighting against one another. Okay? You have to allow one to become the master, the VFD becomes the master. 7 and 8 refer again to the controller. This is the default setting. When you purchase the compressor, it comes in standalone mode, which means you're using it, you're not going to be applying it in a network fashion. Right? So the default is standard. You only need to change it if you apply the compressor in a network. Number 10, discharge temperature. Okay. When you receive the compressor, this will be switched to on because we are trying to protect the compressor from overheating. However, if you're using this compressor with demand cooling, which is still going to be required for R22, or if the refrigerants transition to 407A, you still need to use demand cooling. In this case, we're going to switch it off, and we're going to allow the demand cooling to become the master. Is any of you familiar with demand cooling? The demand cooling module has its own NTC sensor. Alright? So we don't want the two modules to be competing with one another. So one has to become the master. So in condensing units, when you buy condensing units that's fitted with demand cooling, this dip switch will be set to off so that the demand cooling module takes control of protecting the compressor. That's basically summarized on these sheets. This is just a representation of what I was talking about earlier on. Using a compressor as a standalone or using compressor in a network. So here we have an example of a Dixel controller. This can be uploaded with the Modbus coding. You then can connect your compressors via daisy chain to this controller. In a standalone mode, if you wish to extract information from the compressor, you can buy software and a USB interface. Okay? You can then connect your laptop to the compressor, You can then upload all that information onto your laptop. All right, and it will help you diagnose the compressor. So this is an example of network where you have a rack. So you go from compressor 1 to 2 to 3, 4 to the rack controller. Right. Typically this rack controller will be connected to a monitoring server. So all that information will be available on the server. Now, if you choose to use a PC to extract information from the compressor, after you've connected it, this is the software that will come up on your laptop. Right? It allows all access to the compressor parameters. This is all the information you can extract from the module. You can get the compressor model and serial number, the sensor module firmware, the compressor nominal voltage and frequency. Right? This is pre-programmed to the compressor. Operating information. You can extract the number of compressor running hours. Okay? So from the day that the compressor or condensing unit was installed, if you keep a record of that date, you know how many hours that compressors run every single day. Okay? It will then give you a readout on oil pressure. How many times has it tripped? How many times or how long has it been running with good oil pressure? Number of compressor starts. So this will help you diagnose if you have short cycling problems in the system. Because typically we want to restrict the number of starts to 10, 12 an hour. Now when you connect your laptop to the compressor, this is what we call real-time data. You can connect your laptop, it will give you the current reading, the voltage, the power consumption, and the discharge temperature live on your laptop. Okay? So you know exactly how the compressors operate. And last but not least, there's a complete alarm history that is saved on that module. Okay? Now on the PC software, that alarm history will be displayed in 3 formats. And we've got the most recent, an 8-day, and then a yearly alarm count. Okay. So this is just an example. When you connect your PC and you go to display number 1, it will tell you what the 10 most recent trips are. Okay. So this is the most recent, then you had an overvoltage, phase loss, low oil pressure, etc. So this will tell you exactly what's been happening in the system. The next screen will give you an 8-day alarm history. Okay? So now if you connect your PC to the compressor, you will know how many trips you've had, what trips you've had in the past 8 days of operation. Okay? This information can help you diagnose if there's any system problems. Now once we get to day 7, we allocate a counter. Alright? And that counter gets allocated to the main trip condition. So even after 2, 3, 4 years, when you connect your PC to the compressor, it will tell you that this compressor has been running for 4 years, and in that time I've had 20 motor temperature trips, 15 low oil pressure trips, etc. So it will give you the complete operating history from day 1. Okay? Until the compressor gets replaced or until it's reached its runtime. And that's all I have on the new Discus 3 compressor. There's a nice illustration up there. This compressor is supplied in black only, and I will get that to the color change in a later presentation. Okay. Are there any questions about Discus 3 before we move on to the next product? No questions? Nobody?
I have one.
Yeah.
Just about the diagnostic module. Since Saudi Arabia is having around sometimes on summer 62 degrees centigrade average, the reliability of that control to be semi-exposed.
And Mrs. Marvin from Emerson Company, and I hope that your interest rate has been active. But I want something from you. Our short questionnaire does not take a minute from your time, but it means to us a lot. So please cooperate with us to answer before departure. Now, your dinner, and we hope to see you in another meeting with the meeting of Hassuna and Emerson and your talking for you أحمد قدة Republic English. باسمكم أود أن أشكر السيد ألبرتو والسيد مارفن وشركة إيمرسون وشركة هاشم حسونة، وأتمنى أن تكون الفائدة قد تحققت من هذا السمينار. أيها الأخوة، لدينا استبانة قصيرة لا تأخذ من وقتكم دقيقة، ولكنها تعني لنا الكثير، لذلك أرجو التعاون معنا في الإجابة قبل المغادرة. والآن تفضلوا لتناول طعام العشاء، ونتمنى أن نراكم في لقاءات أخرى مع تحيات شركة هاشم حسونة ومحدثكم أحمد قدة للعلاقات العامة. شكرا.
As I mentioned earlier, with the development of the new Discus 3 compressors for the Ford 6-cylinder, we releasing the compressor in black. Okay? The reason why we're doing that is that traditionally, when we first started with semi-automatics from the USA, they were built in black. Europe was grey. And to try and get back to a common product platform where we have focused and clear marketing and clear communication, we are going to revert back to the black color. Okay? So soon all the products that we offer from Copeland, compressor-wise, whether it's scroll, hermetic reciprocating, and now semi-hermetic, everything will go back to the black color. Okay? So, as we discussed earlier, Discus 2 to Discus 3, we are releasing Discus 3, which is already done in November 2012. That will only be released in black. Now for the other compressors in our in our product offering, where we have the K&L, the 2S, 2D, 3S, 3D, 8S and 8D, they are going to be going through the same transition. Okay? So this has actually already happened. The compressors, if you buy compressors only, they are available in black since the 15th of March. But by the end of the year, we will discontinue grey completely. Yeah. 30th of November will be the cut-off date for our distributors that they can order. So they can still order grey compressors up until that date. And after that date, only black will be available. Okay. So there will be a transition from grey to black on the compressors. When it comes to condensing units, we've already released the new Discus 3, which is basically on the Z9 condenser and W9. And this will again happen with all the other condensing units in our range. All right. Now this transition has already started. It started in February this year. Okay. We allowed a couple of months of supplying grey units into the market, but basically from August, July, August, we're only supplying black. Okay? So this is an example of a black condensing unit that will be shipped from now on. Okay? When it comes to the Ks and Ls, the 2Ds and the 3Ds, there's no change in product. The product is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Only the color has changed. Okay? Are there any questions about the color branding change? I think it's pretty clear. Okay. And the reason why we're doing this, we're just reverting back to our traditional color for better marketing, communication and so on, standardize on one color, purple and black. All right? The next product I'm going to discuss is the ZX condensing unit. Okay. We've got an example here of the ZX unit. This is one here. So when Hashem contacted me, he said we'd like to have some seminar on troubleshooting. But I think before we get to that, we need to review what the condensing unit is, what is fitted in there, and maybe that will better help you understand how to troubleshoot the unit. So we'll go back to basics, essentially. So if you look at the ZX product, it's an air-cooled horizontal discharge unit, so we're blowing air from the back through the fan. It can be floor or wall mounted, so like an air conditioning unit, where we mount the brackets onto the side of the wall, or on the roof, or floor mounted. We've gone with the low leak design. What we mean by that, that all the fittings internally are brazed connections. Okay, we'll try and reduce leakage. We've got a scroll compressor in here. Right? This compressor will have a sound jacket. The purpose of the sound jacket is to reduce the noise. We've got a large coil, small fan design. Okay. So to try and design a condenser combination that can work in high ambient, one of the things that we took into account in designing this unit was to reduce the noise level. Right, so we've gone with a big coil, small fan. This is a 6-pole motor running at 900 RPM. It's got integrated condenser fan speed control. So as your ambient drops and it gets cooler at night, the fans will slow down. Right, reduce the noise. And then we have the electronic protection. This is the nomenclature. So we've got ZX. We've got two variants. We've got a chiller unit and a low temperature freezer unit. Right, so that would be ZX and ZXL. The next numbers denote the nominal horsepower. So if you have an 030, that means it's a 3 horsepower. This is a 3 horsepower condenser unit. Then we have 0 for mineral oil. We primarily have supplied this unit in R22, so it comes with mineral oil. We do have the ester oil version available, 404A. Then we have the compressor motor, TF7. Okay, T is for three-phase, F means it's got internal projection, and the last digit indicates the voltage. So for Saudi Arabia, we're supplying 200 or 230 volt, that will be voltage code 5, so you'll get a TF5. And for 380 volt application, you get a TF7. The last three digits are bill of materials. Okay, bill of material will tell you what is fitted in the unit. Alright? We have various options available, but Basuna has standardized on 2 bill of materials. I'll explain to you what is fitted in there. But before we get to that, in terms of the range, so we've got the ZX, which is a high back or medium back chiller unit. We've got 6 models from 2 to 7.5 horsepower. Single fan is the 2 and 3, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7.5 is the twin fan or dual fan. All the medium temp units use what we call suction line liquid injection. Okay? We inject liquid into the suction line to cool down the compressor. And those of you who have worked with semiomatics, it's very similar to demand cooling. Okay? If you understand demand cooling and how it works, we've adopted that concept and we're basically using demand cooling in this compressor as well. That's what we mean by suction line liquid injection. The units that Basuna has on offer is primarily for R22, so the capacity range there at -5 is 4.2 to about 14 kilowatts. So it can cover your cold rooms and your cabinets up to about a 24-foot area, I think, around about there. ZXL, L means low temperature application. There are 8 models available, again from 2 to 7.5, single fan from 2 to 4, dual fan from 5 to 7.5. Now on these units we use a concept called EVI. EVI stands for Enhanced Vapor Injection. It's a new technology, and I've got some slides to explain that technology to you. Again, the supply is on R22, and that is the capacity range of about 2.7 to 7.3 kilowatts. So again, it will cover a fair size of your small freezer rooms and some of your low temperature display cabinets. These are just some pictures of installations. You can have your small stores with only 1 unit, 2 units, wall mounted, floor mounted, and this is actually a small supermarket in Africa. Small supermarket in Africa. Mechanical specs, as I mentioned before, Basuna is bringing in 2 BOM variants. So on the chiller, we're supplying bill of material 401, on the low temp unit 451. The primary difference between the two, with the 451, we've included the oil set in the accumulator for low temperature application. Okay. In essence, this is what you're going to get. So metallic housing. Okay. We've got a stud tube skull compressor in there. The condenser coil has got a blue tinge in it, that's black gold, that's for that's a rust inhibitor, right? Protects against corrosion. The unit's fitted with a receiver with the outlet isolating valve. We've got the liquid line. So here's the liquid line, we've got the dryer and this liquid line side glass fitted inside the housing as well. The suction and liquid valve connection will be located on the outside of the unit. If you come up later, you can actually see the service valves mounted on the side. Okay. Those service valves have got charging ports in for access ports, so you can read your pressures on them. There is one adjustable low pressure switch for pump down. This is it here, low pressure switch. Okay. In terms of the safety, on the ZX unit we've got an LP safety switch. It's an encapsulated switch, which means you cannot adjust it. The settings are preset. Right. So we've got an LP for the medium temp, and for the low temp, it's not fitted in there. And then we've got an HP switch for both the medium and the low temp. Now these switches are preset, you cannot change it, right? So for example, on the HP, it will cut open at 30 bar and reset F24. So these are presets. As I mentioned before, on the ZXL unit, you've got well set and accumulator fitted already. You have the fan speed control, and then you've got the complete electrical box. Okay? What do we mean by a complete electrical box? We have the switch gear to operate the compressor. And we have the electronic boards which are going to protect that compressor. These are dimensions, it's pretty compact. The footprint for the single and dual fin is exactly the same. We just extend the height to accommodate the second fan. So it makes it easier for site installation on standardizing on spacing your brackets. So this is a typical layout. We've got an example right here. So basically what we have is we have the condenser compartment, the receiver, the fan. In this section here we have the compressor with the liquid line side glass, and then the electrical components around the top section. On the LT, exactly the same, except that we have a oil separator and we have the accumulator.
تسأل بالدور هيقول لك اتش بي باين الدور هم اسأل الاستقبال هيقول أنا قاعد في الأول مستني.
So, on the medium temp units, we have suction line liquid injection, and as I mentioned before, this is very similar to demand cooling. Okay? So I've got a very simple diagram here. All we're doing is we're taking liquid from the liquid line, expanding it through an expansion valve, and we have a mixture of liquid and gas that we introduce into the suction line. So we're keeping the gas cool in the compressor to prevent the compressor from overheating. This is the operating limit. So now you're telling me why do we use suction line liquid injection for the medium temp units? Because we normally only use it for low temp. Okay? Well, with hermetics, we need to do this to give you a much bigger operating envelope. So for the chiller unit, you can run from -15 all the way up to +5 up to 50 degrees C ambient. Okay? And the only reason why we can run to these high ambients is by introducing liquid injection to cool down the compressor. If we didn't do that, this compressor would overheat. Now, for the ZXL, we have what we call EVI, which is enhanced vapor injection. Okay? With this design, the compressor has 2 suction ports, 1 discharge. Right? And the concept, I don't know if any of you have worked on 2-stage compressors that has a subcooler. It's basically the same thing. We've taken the concept of a subcooler on a 2-stage compressor and we've applied it to scroll. One of the reasons we do that is by using a subcooling circuit, we increase the capacity of the unit and it gives you a much better efficiency. Secondly, by using the subcooler, we keep the compressor cool so it doesn't overheat. So this is an example of the compressor. This is your main suction port, so this will come from your evaporator coil or your indoor coil. This is the secondary port which goes through the heat exchanger as a subcooler. That's going to be introduced into this faucet. And then the common discharge. So by using EVI, which provides cooling, we get a lot more capacity out of the system. This is the operating envelope. You can go from -40 to -15 up to 50 degrees C on R22. Okay. So it gives you a nice big operating envelope. Now this is the schematic for the subcooler. Alright, so this is a little bit complicated, so just bear with me. We've got the condenser. We condense the refrigerant into the receiver. This is now my liquid line coming out of the receiver, right? Now, traditionally, I would have just taken my liquid line straight to the indoor coil, correct? Right. So what we're doing now is we're going to take this liquid line, feed it through a heat exchanger or a subcooler. Right. Once that comes out there, we've got an expansion device that expands that liquid through the heat exchanger. Right. So the liquid coming out of the receiver is subcooled to a much lower temperature, and we introduce the vapor back into the compressor via the secondary port. And this is basically a two-stage cycle with a standard semi-hermetic two-stage cooling. So in a ZXL unit, when you open up the fan compartment, you will find a heat exchanger mounted in there with the electronic expansion valve. This heat exchanger will be insulated to prevent condensation, and then all the lines here are also insulated with Armaflex. Right. So with EVI, we are subcooling the liquid line. All right. So traditionally, if you were condensing at 50, your liquid line would be at 47. You would have 3K subcooling. But then in this application, your liquid line is going to be a lot cooler. So just as an example, if you're running a freezer room at minus 25 and your ambient is 48 degrees C, your liquid line will be 23 degrees C. It's much, much, much cooler. By introducing cooler liquid into the indoor coil, we increase the capacity of the coil. So this is how we get the extra capacity. So if you use a ZXL unit, it's very important that you insulate the liquid line all the way through to the indoor coil. Right? We want to protect that subcooling. If you do not insulate the liquid line, all that subcooling will be lost, and you're going to have a reduced capacity out of that system. So very importantly, insulate the liquid line. We recommend 1/2 inch to 3/4, whatever is available in the market. Next thing to remember is expansion valves. Typically when we select expansion valves, we select it at 3 to 4K subcooling. Most of the manufacturers display their capacities at 3 to 4K subcooling. At the bottom you'll find a correction table. And that correction table will give you values to show the increase in capacity when the liquid is subcooled. So you've got to be very careful that when you use a ZXL, make sure your expansion valve is selected properly. Because if you introduce subcooled liquid into the expansion valve gives you a lot more capacity. Alright? So you could be oversizing the valve. And then you could be getting liquid back to the condenser unit. So just make sure that the expansion valve is selected and you've done the adjustment for subcooling. Very important. Okay, now we move on to the control board. Each unit will have a circuit breaker, a contactor, terminal connector, and then we have what we call boards, electronic boards. We've got a power board, and a control board, and a diagnostic module. You can see all of these over here. So what does all this electronics do with this unit, right? Well, firstly, it needs to control the liquid injection on the medium temp unit. It needs to control the vapor injection on the low temp unit. It's going to control the fan speed, so as your ambient comes down, it reduces the fan speed to reduce the noise. It's going to protect the compressor. It's got some diagnostic features with it as well. One important point you've got to remember is it's got a fresh start program. Right? Every time the compressor starts up, it's going to run for 3 seconds, switch off for 20. It's going to repeat that cycle 3 times. And the reason why we do that, that if you do have a lot of refrigerant in the compressor, this is what we call bump starting. You try and get rid of the liquid before the compressor runs. So this is one safety feature where we bump start the compressor. We try and boil off the liquid in the refrigerant, and then only on the 4th time will it run, because by that time all of the liquid refrigerant will have boiled off and the oil. And then it's got the control output for the compressor. So once you get a demand signal into the board,
You can see the alarm. You can also change the setting of the alarm. And also, one important thing of this server we are emphasizing, I believe most of you are aware of the Saudi government becoming very strict on food quality. So we need to safeguard and maintain food quality. Some 4 months ago, I heard in Riyadh that in a period of 1 week time, the Saudi government closed down 400 fast food because of non-compliance to safeguard the food quality. So now, the kingdom is becoming aware of the importance of this type of monitoring server in order to guard or safeguard the food quality. Another feature of this server, for example, let me use McDonald's as an example. From time to time, there is an inspector from the government that visits McDonald's. I want to see the log of temperature of your chiller. I want to see the log of temperature of your freezer to ensure that you are maintaining the right food temperature. So it is very easy to cheat by papers if you write, if you are maintaining it at -18, put it -18, -18, -18. But with this server, you can generate a data wherein this server, it's not only receiving an alarm, it's not only changing of parameters, it is logging the temperature. For example, XWeb 300 can handle 18 devices. So you have 18 devices. The XWeb 300 or the 500 can log the temperature of all those 18 devices for 1 year. So you have 1 year data reading. And if you are familiar with the HACCP, HACCP requires that every 15 minutes you will report the temperature. Say 12 o'clock, record the temperature. 12:15, record. 12:30, record, and so on. And that is for 1 year. So if you have 18 devices, or if you have even up to 247 devices, the XWeb can record all the temperature for 1 year. And you can, after a year, you can just export it to an Excel file. It will have the each instrument, each address of the instrument. And then, for example, in a sudden surprise inspection from a Saudi government, okay, going back McDonald's, you can generate a data. For example, a period of 24 hours, a period of 1 week, a period of 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. So you can give them the data immediately by exporting to Excel and print that out. So no, at the same time we are becoming green here. So we are reducing the use of paper. And you can also, this is the example of the data reading. So you have the date, you have the time. And these are the temperature. So you can configure which type of temperature you want. You want the set point, you want the evaporator temperature, and the room temperature. And this is also the graph that shows the status of the unit. It will easily show you some peak of temperature, for example. This is the alarm management, where you can set the notification by email, SMS, or fax. So this is the XWeb 300 monitoring. So it can monitor it. Eventually, you can also integrate the compressor rack and the ZX condensing unit into the XWeb for monitoring purposes. XWeb 500, similar to the XWeb 300 principle, but with an added function of controlling each instrument. For example, this is what we call the scheduler. So you can set each instrument when to defrost, when to switch on and switch off the light, when to switch on and activate the energy saving management of the system. And for example, you know the schedule of some holidays, you can also include that holiday schedule using the calendar function. So, for example, there will be no store operation. You can increase the set point and you can switch on the energy saving at an earlier time. This is the graph as a quick overview of, you can show the temperature of the room, of the evaporator, or even the condenser. And then this one, you can take picture of, for example, a particular area in your store, and you can put the instrument, for example, XR60, and it will show you the status of this particular area of the say supermarket. So it will show you if the compressor is running, if it is a 1:1 unit. It will show you the temperature of the display cabinet. It will show you if there is a defrost and if there is an alarm. So the 3000 and 5000 are for the industrial size and then higher number of devices that can be controlled. The X center is similar to a call center. Let's say, for example, McDonald's. They have several stores in Riyadh. They have several stores in Jeddah. But the main office is situated in Riyadh, and he wants to monitor all of this at the same time. You can use this software as a centralized alarm management to monitor all those stores. If you have 200, if you have 300 stores, this software can monitor all of those stores, so whether in Jeddah, in Riyadh, or in Dammam. And then you are able to access each store to change or modify the parameter setting. You can add a recipient of email, and then also in case of an alarm, there is a with the use of Google Maps, you can also have in your screen the, let's say, the map of Jeddah, Riyadh, or Dammam. So in case of an alarm at a particular store, you will see the location it is blinking in red. Or let's say this particular store in Riyadh is having an alarm, so it will be easy for you to check which store, and you can call on the store or the technician to check what is happening and check the alarm. So this is the typical architecture of the X Center software. For example, the software is installed in your PC, and you are in Jeddah. So, if you have an internet or internet connection, meaning via LAN or WAN connection, it's not telephone line or modem. So you can, this is for example the cold room project in Riyadh, cold room project in Jeddah, and in Dammam. So if you are in Jeddah, you can monitor what is happening in Riyadh. You can monitor what is happening in Jeddah as well as in Dammam. So you can access all of these, you can change the parameter. For example, this one is freezer room. And after you remove all the products, the store owner, can I use this room as a chiller? Wherein it is a freezer room. And the store, I have an urgent, I have some products, but I need a chiller temperature, not freezer. So from the X Center, you can change the temperature of this room to a chiller temperature. For example, your controller is capable of both medium and low temperature. So you can do that without flying from Jeddah to Riyadh and just sitting in front of your computer. This one is with the use of internal or external modems. So it is also the same, but the only thing here is it will have a longer communication. It is a little slow when compared to the WAN or LAN connection. This one is a typical setup we've done in Oman. This is an Almarai project in Oman. They have 13 cold rooms, so a combination of freezer and chiller, and they have a rack compressor controller. These are the rack compressor for chiller, rack compressor for the freezer. So we interconnected this via the RS485 network, and from the plant room going to the computer room. So the computer room, they located the XO300 in the computer room with the router and the computer. So from the office, they can see what is happening. And from the main office of Almarai, let's say from Saudi, they can have an access to the network in Oman. And from Saudi, they can monitor what is happening in each room in Oman. That's the principle of remote monitoring. So let me just walk you to the actual Dixel server website. The XWeb will not require any special software. It just you just need to use an IP address. So if you have your laptop, your computer, just an IP address. So because in setting the XWeb, you need to assign a fixed IP address so that you can type the IP address, for example 102.168.1.1 into the Explorer, and then you can have this main page. So for example, this server is located in Italy, and right now we are in Jeddah. So they have given me the permission to use this server, but I can only log on as a guest. Consider me now as a technician. So I am given the permission to enter as a guest. So this is the main page of the XWeb 500. I will walk you quickly on the devices connected to the XWeb server. So for example, you want to see a particular device, and then you want to know the status. So right now what we are doing is a principle of WAN, connection, the wide area network. So now my instrument connected to the XWeb is an XW, or the wing type controller. You will see the temperature of the probe 1, probe 2, and then the device is on. And there are some commands here which, okay, I can switch on and switch off the device from Jeddah. And for example, this is my Italy site. I can switch the device on, switch the device off. I can command an active defrost. I can switch on the energy saving on and off, or fast freeze on and off. In case of an alarm, for example, this one is showing a high temperature alarm. So for example, your device has a buzzer, so it will continuously sound the buzzer until no one is attending the alarm. So from here you can mute the alarm just to switch off the buzzer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the alarm is not there. It will still show the alarm on the screen. So you can call someone from Italy. This device is having a high temperature alarm. And if you click the parameters, if you have the permission to modify the parameters, you can change the parameter setting. So for those of you who are familiar in using different types of controllers, you can have the regulation, alarm, display, fans, digital input, and other configuration. So for example, the regulation parameters. So you see the set point just for the purpose of demo. The set point is 25 degrees C. And you will see here the lowest minimum set point, maximum set point. So from here, if you are sitting in front of your computer and you have the access to change this, so let's say, so you can do that. Let's say, I would like to make this room freezer. So I want the set point to be minus 18. So from your computer, you can change that to minus 18. And you will write that on the device. So no need for you to send a technician to the site to configure the controller. You can just access it from the X-Web and change the parameters. And this is the data wherein you will, earlier you have seen the exporting to Excel so that you will have a the data of the reading of the controller. So from here you can configure which data. For example, reading of 24 hours, a reading of 1 month, 1 week. It's taking a little longer to connect. So for example, you want to export the data to Excel. And here is the available data. So from March 15 up to August 6, so you can pick which type of data you want to export to Excel. Or if you just want to have a 1 week reading, 1 month reading, 48 hours reading. Here are the values that you can export to Excel. On the permission, for example, you are the administrator, so you are the administrator and you can change everything, but for example, we are only allowed to be a user or a guest, so there will be a certain limit on the permission, so we can only read and we cannot modify the setting. So if you do not want the technician to play with the setting, so you just give him the access to read or export data. And you are the admin, so you can change everything. You are the only one who can change the parameter. Server log, okay, we are not given the access. The purpose of the server log, for example, in the store somebody played with the instrument and they changed the setting, you will be able to see from the for example, something wrong happened in the store. The freezer room becomes chiller because somebody played with the temperature. And they were not able to set it back to the freezer temperature. So there will be a high temperature alarm. So you will know from the server log what time, what day that they made the changes to the controller. So no one can deny that I did not play, I did not touch the instrument. Yes, somebody from that store made changes to the instrument because on the server log you will see in each event the date, the time, and the activity. For example, modified parameter, it will show you modified parameter. So somebody played with the parameter. And then so many other capabilities of the X-Web. So not only to monitor the alarm, but you can also do the controlling, remote monitoring, remote controlling. So I'm done with my part. If you have some specific details, in particular to pixel controllers, you can approach me during our dinner. I believe it's, I don't want to take much of your time tonight. So thank you very much for all of your time listening to our product presentation. On your behavior, I would like to thank Mr. Alberto and Mr. Marvin from Emerson Company, and I hope that your interest rate has been active. But I want something from you. Our short questionnaire does not take a minute from your time, but it means to us a lot. So please cooperate with us to answer before the class. Now, your dinner, and we hope to see you in another meeting with the meeting of Asuna and Emerson and your talker for you, Ahmad Qidda, Republic Relations. باسمكم أود أن أشكر السيد ألبرتو والسيد مارفن وشركة إمرسون وشركة هاشم حسونة، وأتمنى أن تكون الفائدة قد تحققت من هذا السمينار. أيها الأخوة، لدينا استبانة قصيرة لا تأخذ من وقتكم دقيقة، ولكنها تعني لنا الكثير. لذلك أرجو التعاون معنا في الإجابة قبل المغادرة. والآن تفضلوا لتناول طعام العشاء، ونتمنى أن نراكم في لقاءات أخرى مع تحيات شركة هاشم حسونة ومحدثكم أحمد قدة للعلاقات العامة. شكرا.